Above the rust-colored world of Orpheus 9, the human diplomatic vessel Harmony of Dawn drifted peacefully through orbit like a floating jewel. Its silver hull reflected the distant glow of the system's twin suns, while thousands of smaller escort drones moved carefully around it. Across the galaxy, billions watched the historic live broadcast. For the first time in history, humanity stood before the Galactic Council as equals. Inside the central observation chamber, Ambassador Elias Ward adjusted the collar of his white diplomatic uniform and looked through the massive glass window toward the planet below. Mining fires burned across the surface like tiny orange scars. Beside him stood representatives from 12 alien civilizations. Some were nervous, some curious, others clearly uncomfortable around humans. The oldest among them, Council Elder Therx, slowly turned his reptilian face toward Ward. "You understand," Therx said carefully, "many still fear your species." Ward smiled faintly. "Honestly, humans spent centuries fearing ourselves too." A few diplomats laughed quietly. The tension in the room softened. Nearby, human technician Lena Holt monitored the live transmission numbers climbing higher every second. "Ambassador," she whispered excitedly, "we just crossed 11 billion live viewers." Ward exhaled slowly. 11 billion. Every major civilization in known space was watching humanity's first true step into galactic politics. For generations, humans had been treated like outsiders. Too emotional, too unpredictable, too violent. The old wars of Earth were legendary among alien historians. But humanity had changed. Earth became known for rebuilding dead planets, curing plagues, and ending famines across frontier colonies. Human engineers stabilized collapsing stars. Human doctors saved species the galaxy had abandoned. Still, trust came slowly. Tonight was supposed to change that. Ward stepped toward the central camera platform as soft lights illuminated the chamber. The live transmission symbol flashed green. "You're on," Lena whispered. The ambassador looked directly into the camera. "To the people of the galaxy," he began calmly, "humanity does not seek conquest, we seek friendship, cooperation, a future where no species stands alone against the dark." His voice carried through every station, colony, and military outpost in explored space. Behind him, alien diplomats nodded carefully. Ward continued, "We know our history frightens many of you. We understand that fear. But humanity learned something important from our wars." He paused. "Survival means nothing if you survive alone." For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Then applause erupted softly from several council representatives. Back on Earth, families watching from crowded cities cheered. Children waved small galactic council flags. News networks celebrated what many called the greatest moment in human history. Then the alarms began screaming. The entire chamber froze. Red warning lights flooded the walls. Lena's face turned pale as she checked sensor readings. Multiple hyperspace ruptures detected. The ship trembled violently. Outside the observation window, space itself twisted unnaturally. Black fractures opened across the stars like cracks spreading through glass. Then the warships appeared. 6 enormous vessels emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Matte black hulls. No lights. No diplomatic signals. Only weapons. The room went silent. Every alien delegate recognized them instantly. "The Varkesh Dominion," one diplomat whispered in horror. Fear spread across the chamber like fire. The Varkesh were legendary across the outer systems. Ruthless, merciless. Entire civilizations disappeared after opposing them. Their empire believed in destroying future threats before they could grow powerful. And humanity had just become one. A deep mechanical signal suddenly echoed through every communication channel on board. Then a voice spoke. Cold, emotionless. "Humanity is classified as a rising military species." Ward's expression hardened. The voice continued. "Preventive extermination authorized." Outside, the black warships began charging their weapons. Bright red energy glowed across massive cannon arrays. Panic exploded inside the chamber. Transmit surrender codes. Open emergency channels. We are protected under council law. Lena frantically worked the controls. They're jamming everything. Another diplomat looked toward Ward in disbelief. They can't do this. This is a diplomatic vessel. But the Varkesh commander answered immediately. Peaceful words do not erase violent potential. The first cannon fired. A blinding beam of plasma ripped through space and slammed into the harmony of dawn. The entire ship shook violently. Explosions erupted across multiple decks. People were thrown to the floor. Screams filled the chamber. The live broadcast continued. Across billions of screens, the galaxy watched the human diplomatic ship begin to burn. And far away on Earth, every human watching realized the same terrifying thing at once. This was not an attack. It was an execution. The harmony of dawn drifted in broken orbit above Orpheus 9, its once glimmering hull now scorched and fractured. Emergency lights flickered through collapsed corridors, while oxygen hissed into space through jagged tears in the structure. Inside the diplomatic chamber, Ambassador Elias Ward pulled himself up from the floor, blood floating in small red spheres around him due to the failing gravity system. Around him, alien diplomats lay wounded, some unconscious, others barely breathing. Lena Holt slammed her hand against a shattered console. "They're still firing," she shouted. "They're targeting escape corridors." Another explosion rocked the ship. The ceiling cracked open, exposing the void. Ward looked toward the shattered viewport. 6 Varkesh warships hovered like executioners in the dark. No urgency, no chaos. Just control. Like they were finishing a procedure. A dying council delegate grabbed Ward's sleeve. "Human ambassador," the alien gasped. "Call your fleet." Ward didn't answer immediately. He watched a rescue pod outside get torn apart mid-launch by a precision rail shot. Then another's. Then another's. The Varkesh were not attacking randomly. They were erasing survivors. Ward closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, something in his expression had changed. Not anger. Something colder. Acceptance. "Lena," he said quietly. She looked at him through smoke and sparks. "We need Earth command. We need military response now." Ward stepped toward the emergency transmitter. His voice was calm. Too calm. "Seal the diplomatic channel," he ordered. Lena froze. "What?" "Do it." She hesitated, then obeyed. The transmission link to Earth activated. Far away, across the Sol system, the signal reached classified human command networks. And every human admiral currently on standby suddenly stopped what they were doing. Because the message code was one they had only seen once in training. Black Sun Protocol Authorization. Admiral Sophia Reyes of Earth Orbital Command stood motionless in the command chamber as alarms began sounding across every hidden military installation in human space. "Confirm origin," she said sharply. A tactical officer swallowed. "It's coming from Orpheus 9, diplomatic vessel Harmony of Dawn." Another officer interrupted. "And it's Ambassador Ward." Silence filled the room. Reyes slowly stepped closer to the holographic display. "Put it through." The signal stabilized. Ward's face appeared through distortion, smoke, and flickering emergency lights. Behind him, the ship was still burning. But his voice was steady. "They tried diplomacy," Ward said. A pause. "They answered with extinction." Rey's jaw tightened. On multiple tactical screens, classified assets began waking up across human-controlled space. Ships that had not been powered in decades. Stations hidden inside asteroid belts. Weapons the Council never approved. Ward continued. "We are not requesting retaliation." Another pause. "We are confirming authorization." Reyes closed her eyes for a fraction of a second. Then she gave the order. "Wake the Titan fleet." Across the galaxy, something changed. Deep within dead systems, massive dormant engines roared to life. Entire moons shifted as hidden hangars opened, and the Varkesh sensors finally detected it. Too late, because humanity had already stopped pretending it was weak. Back aboard the burning Harmony of Dawn, Lena stared at Ward in shock. You planned this." Ward didn't look at her. His eyes were fixed on the distant warships outside. "No," he said softly. "We prepared for it." At that exact moment, space behind the Varkesh fleet rippled. A massive gravitational distortion tore open the void, and something enormous began to emerge. Something that made even the Dominion commanders stop firing. Because it was not a ship. It was a shadow of war the galaxy had never been meant to see. And its name was already echoing through every human military channel. Titan class, AETRNUM online space split like broken glass. From the gravitational tier behind the Varkesh fleet, something vast emerged, slowly, deliberately, as if the universe itself had to make room for it. The Eternum. 20 kilometers of black armored structure slid into reality, absorbing starlight instead of reflecting it. Entire sections of its hull rotated independently like mechanical organs. Weapon arrays unfolded silently, each one large enough to level a planet. For a moment, even the Varkesh Dominion stopped firing. Inside the command ship of the Dominion fleet, Commander Drax stared at the tactical display. His voice dropped. "That is not a civilian vessel." Another officer whispered, "No registry, no energy signature match. It wasn't in council databases." Drax slammed his clawed hand onto the console. "Then how is it here?" Back aboard the Harmony of Dawn, Ambassador Ward watched the Titan ship through the shattered viewport. Lena's voice trembled behind him. "That's Earth." Ward didn't answer immediately. He simply watched. Then he spoke quietly. "Yes." Outside, the Eternum rotated its massive core toward the Varkesh formation. A single pulse of blue light built at its center. The Dominion fleet reacted instantly. "All ships fire everything, now." Hundreds of warships unleashed synchronized plasma barrages. The space between them turned white-hot. Entire sections of vacuum boiled as energy collided in impossible intensity. For 10 seconds, the Eternum disappeared inside the storm. The Varkesh commander exhaled. "It is destroyed." Then silence. Then the storm collapsed. And the Eternum was still there. Unmoved. Unharmed. Its surface glowed faintly blue, like a predator waking up. Inside its command core, Admiral Sophia Reyes stood at the center of a rotating tactical chamber. Around her, holographic projections displayed every Varkesh ship in real time. "Target lock confirmed," a voice reported. Reyes looked at the display. "Single strike protocol," she said. "No warnings, no demonstrations." A pause. "End it." The Titan warship fired. Not a beam. Not a missile. A compressed gravitational lance tore forward through space. It hit the Varkesh flagship first. The ship didn't explode. It simply ceased to exist. 1 second it was there. The next, nothing. A void where matter had been erased. Every Varkesh vessel behind it tried to reposition instantly. Too slow. The second wave struck. Ships folded inward like crushed metal paper. Entire squadrons vanished as if the universe had deleted them line by line. Commander Drax staggered back. "Retreat," he screamed. But there was nowhere to retreat to, because humanity had already surrounded them. Hundreds of human warships emerged from stealth positions across the system, silent, precise, coordinated. Not chaos. Control. And all of them were pointed at the Varkesh Dominion. Back on the diplomatic vessel, Lena grabbed Ward's arm. "You told them Earth was peaceful," she shouted. This isn't peace." Ward finally looked at her. His expression was calm, but heavy. "Peace," he said quietly, "is what we offered first." Another explosion rocked the system as the Eternum fired again, cutting through 3 Varkesh cruisers in a single sweep. Lena stepped back. "Then what is this?" Ward turned back to the viewport. Outside, alien ships burned like falling stars. This, he said, is what comes after peace is rejected. The Varkesh fleet began breaking formation. Panic spread through their communications. Humanity deployed hidden war assets. This violates Council observation laws. They lied about their capabilities. But no one answered them. Because human fleets were not listening anymore. They were acting. Inside the Eternum, Admiral Reyes received new coordinates. Multiple distress signals. Not from Varkesh ships. From escaped Dominion pods. She stared at them for a long moment. Then she gave one final order. Let them run. A junior officer hesitated. Ma'am. Rey's eyes didn't move from the battlefield. Let them carry the message. Moments later, surviving Varkesh ships warped out of the system, burning, shattered, broadcasting terror across every known frequency. And for the first time in Dominion history, they were the ones fleeing. Back in the burning diplomatic ship, Ward watched them disappear. Then he said softly, "Now the galaxy will ask the real question." Lena looked at him. "What question?" Ward's eyes stayed on the stars. "Why does humanity have monsters like that?" A long pause. "And what did we lose to become them?" Far away, in the darkness beyond known space, something older than the Varkesh heard the war signal. And began to wake. The Orpheus 9 system was no longer a battlefield. It had become a warning. Burning fragments of Varkesh cruisers drifted through orbit like broken bones in space. Entire sections of the starfield were still glowing from the Titan warship's gravitational strikes. Silence hung heavy between the wreckage, too clean, too absolute. The Eternum drifted forward slowly, its massive hull casting a shadow across the ruined fleet. Inside its command core, Admiral Sophia Reyes stood surrounded by fatting holograms of enemy positions. Every Varkesh signal had gone dark or fled into hyperspace. Yet no one on the bridge looked relieved. Because Earth wasn't the only thing that had reacted. A deep sensor alarm echoed through the Titan systems. A junior analyst stepped back from her console. "Admiral, we're picking up something else." Reyes turned slightly. "Source." The analyst hesitated. "Not Varkesh." The display shifted. Space beyond the system rippled again, but this time not like an attack. Like something opening its eyes. Far outside the orbit of Orpheus 9, beyond all known trade routes and council charts, an enormous energy signature expanded across deep space. It wasn't a fleet entering. It was a presence awakening. Back aboard the shattered harmony of dawn, Ambassador Ward felt it too. The lights flickered, then stabilized, then dimmed again, as if reality itself was losing power. Lena looked at him nervously. "Tell me that's not another fleet." Ward didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared at the distant stars. "No," he said finally. "That's not a fleet." A pause. "That's older." A sudden transmission cut through all channels. Council, Dominion, human, everything. It was not translated. It simply forced meaning into every listener's mind. A voice without tone. Without origin. Without direction. Anomaly diatiacitiidae. Every ship in the system froze. Even the Eternum. Inside its core chamber, alarms screamed for the first time since activation. Reyes narrowed her eyes. What anomaly? The tactical display updated on its own. And showed something impossible. A structure. Not a ship. Not a fleet. A massive geometric construct floating outside the edge of known space, its shape shifting constantly, as if observation itself was collapsing under its form. Then another message arrived. Military energy signature, human. Silence. Then a second line appeared. Species status, unregistered in previous CYCLES. Reyes clenched her fists. Cycles. The analyst swallowed hard. Admiral, whatever this is, it's not responding to council frequency. A third message arrived. Faster. Colder. Civilization threshold BREACHED. The construct began moving. Not toward Varkesh space. Not toward Earth. Toward everything. At that moment, every surviving Varkesh ship, scattered across multiple systems, sent the same panic signal. They are not the apex threat. They are not the apex threat. We awakened something else. Back on Orpheus 9, Lena's hands shook. What does that mean? She whispered. Ward's face had gone pale. I don't know, he admitted. That's the first honest thing I've said all day. A massive distortion rippled through space again. This time, not an arrival. A projection. The geometric structure spoke again. Humanity has introduced high-class violence into lower cycle space. Reyes stepped forward. Identify yourself. A pause. Then, we are the curators. Every screen in the system flickered. Even destroyed ships briefly powered on just to display the message. Lena whispered, curators of what? Ward stared at the stars, realizing something terrible. Not of peace, he said softly. Of balance. Outside, the geometric entity rotated. And for the first time, human and alien fleets alike realized the same truth. The Varkesh Dominion had never been the strongest thing in the galaxy. They had simply been the loudest thing that hadn't been corrected yet. The Eternum powered its weapons again automatically. Reyes hesitated. For the first time since the war began. Because something in her instincts told her. If she fired now, she might be firing at the rules of existence itself. And the curators were still watching. Waiting. Measuring. Judging. The system fell into a silence deeper than space. Then the curators sent one final line. Humanity will be observed directly. And the stars around Orpheus 9 began to vanish one by one. The stars did not explode. They simply went out. One by one, points of light across the Orpheus 9 system blinked into nothingness, as if someone had reached into the universe and gently erased them with precision. Inside the Eternum, every sensor screamed at once. Not warning of attack. Warning of reality and stability. Admiral Sophia Reyes stood frozen in the command core as the holographic battlefield collapsed into static. Report, she ordered sharply. A tactical officer's voice cracked. Admiral, we're losing external reference stars. Navigation is failing. We can't confirm position relative to any known chart. Another officer stepped back from his console. Gravitational mapping is inconsistent. Space is changing shape. Rey's eyes narrowed. That's impossible. Then the answer arrived. Not as a ship. Not as a fleet. But as a presence pressing against the edge of perception. Outside the Titan warship, the geometric structure expanded into visible space. It was no longer distant. It was everywhere. Angles shifted unnaturally. Lines of light formed impossible patterns across the void, folding into shapes that hurt to perceive. Any attempt to record it resulted in corrupted data, images rewriting themselves into blank fields. Back on the damaged Harmony of Dawn, Ambassador Elias Ward gripped the shattered railing as the entire ship vibrated softly. Lena was shaking. That thing, it's not moving like a ship, she whispered. Ward nodded slowly. It doesn't need to. A sudden system-wide transmission activated again. The same emotionless voice returned. Observation protocol active. Every weapon in the system, including the Varkesh remnants and human fleets, locked in place automatically. Not by command. By force. Reyes slammed her fist onto the console. Override it. No response, the engineer shouted. It's not hacking us, it's rewriting command authority. On the display, human warships froze mid-maneuver. Missile locks disengaged. Reactor outputs stabilized into idle states against all orders. The Eternum itself trembled, then stopped responding to internal commands entirely. Reyes turned slowly. They're disabling us. A pause. And we didn't even fire. Outside the curator's construct unfolded further. A second presence appeared beside it. Then a third. Not ships arriving, but layers of something greater assembling itself into perception. And then, for the first time, it spoke directly into human minds without translation delay. Humanity has REACHED, previously OBSERVED War, behavior PATTRNS. Ward's eyes widened. Observed before. The curator continued. Species 771, C failed after similar expansion. Silence hit harder than any explosion. Lena whispered, failed. Reyes stepped forward. What happened to them? A pause. Then the answer. Correction EXECUTED. The word correction echoed through every system. Varkesh survivors froze in their escape pods, listening. Human fleets stopped struggling against control fields. Even damaged stations drifted silently, held in place by invisible forces. Ward felt something shift in his chest. Not fear. Understanding. These aren't invaders, he said quietly. Lena looked at him. What are they then? Ward stared at the collapsing stars. They're not here to conquer us. A long pause. They're here to decide if we're allowed to exist the way we are. Inside the Eternum, alarms suddenly changed tone. Not emergency alerts. Classification alerts. Reyes looked at the screen. A new message appeared. Species classification, unstable. Then, decision node initiated. The curators began forming a structure around the entire system. Not a weapon, not a barrier, but a containment field made of folded spacetime. Reyes realized something horrifying. They're isolating the system. An officer whispered, from what? Reyes didn't answer immediately, because she saw the answer forming on the edge of the display. Everything outside the field was disappearing from existence. Not destroyed, not moved, just removed from causality itself. Lena stumbled backward. This is worse than the Varkesh, she whispered. Ward didn't disagree. Because for the first time since the Diplomats died, he wasn't sure humanity was the dominant predator in the story anymore. Outside, the curators delivered their final prejudgment message. Humanity will be tested for continued thread integrity. And the entire system went dark. Not destroyed, not silent, but paused, like a hand hovering above a piece on a game board. Deciding whether to let it stay or erase it forever, darkness was not absence. It was containment. Inside the curator's field, the Orpheus 9 system existed in a sealed bubble of frozen causality. Stars no longer moved. Ships no longer responded. Even explosions from earlier battles hung suspended like broken sculptures in space. The Eternum floated motionless, its engines active but disconnected from permission to act. Admiral Sophia Reyes stood in the center of her command core, feeling something she had never felt in her entire career. Silence that had authority. Every system display flickered with the same word. Paused. A technician whispered, "We're not disabled, we're being held." Reyes didn't respond immediately. Her eyes were fixed on the geometric curator structure outside the field boundary. It rotated slowly, as if analyzing every frozen fragment of the battlefield at once. Across the system, human and Varkesh ships hung suspended in identical states of interruption. Missiles mid-flight, fighters frozen in spirals of motion, debris suspended like dust in glass. And somewhere inside that frozen chaos, Ambassador Elias Ward remained conscious aboard the broken diplomatic ship. He pressed his palm against the cracked viewport. Outside, the curators watched. Not with eyes, with comprehension layered into the structure of space itself. Then the voice returned. Not louder, not closer, just clearer. Thread integrity examination, COMMNCING. Lena Holt looked at Ward. What does that mean? She asked. Ward's expression was distant. I think, he said slowly, it means they're checking if reality can survive us. A pause. Then he added quietly, or if we break it. The curators responded instantly. Correct. Inside the Eternum, alarms shifted again. A new overlay appeared on every tactical screen. Not enemy positions, not threat levels, but a sequence of branching outcomes. Billions of simulated futures unfolded in real time. Human fleets, alien civilizations, entire galaxies reorganizing into patterns of war, expansion, collapse. Ray stepped closer. What is that? She demanded. A systems officer swallowed hard. Admiral, it's running predictive collapse models. On what scale? The officer hesitated. On all scales. Outside the containment field, the curators extended a projection directly into the frozen space. A single human soldier appeared mid-motion, suspended in the instant before pulling a trigger during the Carthos battle. Another image formed beside it, a Varkesh civilian world burning after retaliation strikes. Then another, entire star clusters collapsing under escalating war cycles. Ward watched it silently. Lena stepped back. They're judging us based on war, she whispered. Ward shook his head slightly. No, he corrected. They're judging what war turns us into. The curators spoke again. All observed species with human-like expansion, CTORIES, enter cycle of self-erasure. Ray's clenched her fists. So you just erase them, she shouted at the void. No warning, no chance to evolve. A pause. Then, warning has been given in all prior CYCLES. Another projection appeared. Ancient civilizations flickered into existence. Thousands of extinct species, each ending in patterns of escalating conflict, technological acceleration, and eventual collapse into catastrophic self-destruction or universal destabilization. Ward stepped forward slightly. Why are we different? He asked suddenly. Silence. Then, you are not different. That answer hit harder than any weapon. Lena froze. Then why are we still here? She whispered. The curators replied. You are early. Inside the Eternum, Ray's narrowed her eyes. Early for what? The answer came slowly, as if the curators were uncertain whether humanity should hear it. For first contact with higher thread ENTITIES. A shift rippled through space. For the first time, the curators, geometric forms stabilized into something partially comprehensible. A structure resembling gates. Not for travel, but for observation layers above observation. Ward felt his breath catch. Higher entities, he repeated. Lena looked at him. What does that mean? Ward didn't answer immediately, because he finally understood the horror of scale. We thought we were joining a galaxy, he said softly. A pause. But there's more than one layer above it. Ray spoke sharply. If we pass your test, what happens? A long silence followed. Then the curators responded. Continuity is ALLOWED2 extend. Another pause. Failure is removed before expansion CONTMINATES, adjacent THREADS. Lena whispered, removed. Ward closed his eyes. They don't destroy civilizations, he said quietly. They prevent versions of reality from spreading. Suddenly, alarms changed again. This time across all human ships simultaneously. A new message appeared. Decision vector shifting. Humanity observed response pattern, unexpected adaptation DETCTD. Ray stepped forward. What adaptation? The curators paused, then answered. You did not immediately self-destruct after contact. Silence. Across frozen space, every human and alien fleet hung suspended in impossible stillness. And for the first time, the curators hesitated. Inside that hesitation, a crack formed in the judgment, and humanity, still locked in a paused war zone, suddenly became something the curators had not accounted for. a variable that refused to collapse. The curators did not move. But the silence changed. Inside the containment field, everything remained frozen. Ships, debris, light, even the echo of past explosions suspended like memories trapped in glass. Yet for the first time, the pressure holding reality in place felt uncertain. Admiral Sophia Reyes noticed it immediately. Her console flickered. The word paused began to stutter. A systems officer looked up sharply. "Admiral, the field integrity is fluctuating." Reyes narrowed her eyes. "Explain." "It's like the structure is recalculating us." Outside the Eternum, the geometric curator construct rotated slowly. Its angles no longer aligned perfectly. Subtle distortions rippled through its form, as if the entity was struggling to categorize something it didn't expect. Across the frozen battlefield, Ambassador Elias Ward felt it too. Not movement, not freedom, but attention shifting. Lena stepped closer to him, voice barely above a whisper. Something changed. Ward nodded slightly. "Yes." A pause. "They're unsure." The curators responded instantly, their voice threading through every mind at once. "Uncertainty diatiacitiade." The word echoed across the frozen system like a crack in metal. Inside the Eternum, alarms shifted again, no longer warning systems, but classification instability protocols. Entire tactical maps re-rendered themselves repeatedly, unable to lock onto a single prediction of human behavior. Reyes stepped forward. "What are you unsure about?" she demanded. Silence. Then, OBSERVED response does not match prior thread collapse models. Lena frowned. "What models?" Ward answered quietly, still watching the suspended stars. "Every civilization they've seen before must have reacted the same way." Reyes looked at him. "Self-destruction." Ward nodded. "Or compliance or collapse." Outside, a frozen Varkesh cruiser hung mid-break, its hull split open but never fully dying, locked in the exact instant before destruction. Ward gestured slightly toward it. "We didn't do any of that," he said. The curators responded. "Correct." Another pause. Then, "You continue functioning under extreme threat pressure." Inside the containment field, a new projection formed. Not war, not destruction, but Earth. Cities, families, hospitals, children watching the sky during the diplomatic broadcast. Then the attack on the harmony of dawn. Then silence. Reyes' jaw tightened. "You're studying our emotional response." "We are studying thread coherence." Lena whispered, "Thread coherence." Ward's eyes narrowed. "How intact a civilization stays under stress," he said quietly. A pause. The curators responded. "Correct." Then something changed again. The frozen battlefield shifted. For the first time, one human fighter pilot inside the suspended space flickered. Not moving, but resisting the pause. A tiny instability rippled outward. Reyes noticed instantly. "Did you see that?" she asked. An officer nodded, stunned. "One of our pilots, he's still conscious in stasis." The curators reacted immediately. Anomalous resistance diatiacitidae. The geometric structure tightened. The pressure increased. Space itself groaned. Ward stepped forward slightly, feeling it. "They're increasing the test," he said. Lena looked at him in fear. "Test of what?" Ward's voice lowered. "Of whether we break under being held still." The curators answered. Correct. Inside the Eternum, systems began failing, not from attack, but from constraint. Engines strained against immovable physics. Energy reserves surged without release paths. Entire subsystems overheated trying to execute commands that no longer had permission to exist. Reyes clenched her fists. "Then let us move," she said sharply. A pause. Then, Movement Authority DENIED. Silence fell again. But this time it was different. Because humanity had done something no prior civilization had done. It had noticed the cage while inside it. Ward looked at the frozen stars. "We're not supposed to be able to think during this," he said quietly. Lena looked at him. "Why?" Ward didn't answer immediately. Then, "Because thinking changes the result." As if reacting to the statement itself, the curators paused again. A deeper analysis layer opened across the system. New projections appeared. Human decisions under pressure. Diplomats protecting alien lives during death. Soldiers refusing retreat orders to rescue civilians. Entire ships sacrificing themselves for others without strategic gain. The curators spoke again. But slower. Less absolute. Self-sacrificial behavior is high frequency. Reyes stared at the display. "Is that good or bad?" The curators did not answer immediately. Then, unknown classification. For the first time since contact, the system did not complete its judgment. Instead, the containment field weakened slightly. Not release. Not freedom. But space to exist inside the test. Ward felt it. Lena felt it. Reyes felt it. And somewhere in the geometry beyond reality, something unfamiliar began forming inside the curators' collective structure. A question they had never needed before. What are you? And humanity, still frozen in the middle of extinction-level judgment, finally had a crack of opportunity to answer. The question echoed across every frozen atom in the Orpheus 9 system. What are you? Not a command. Not a threat. Not a judgment. A question. For the first time since the curators arrived, silence felt different, less like control, more like hesitation. Inside the containment field, Admiral Sophia Reyes stood in the Eternum's command core, staring at the shifting projections of the curator structure. Her voice was steady. "We are not what your models predicted." A systems officer turned toward her. "Admiral, we're still under full constraint, movement denied, weapons locked." Reyes didn't look away from the display. "I know." A pause. "But they're listening now." Outside, Ambassador Elias Ward stood in the broken diplomatic chamber of the Harmony of Dawn. Lena Holt was beside him, watching frozen debris drift like shattered memories in the void. Ward stepped forward slightly, speaking into the unknown. "We are humans." A pause. The curators waited. Ward continued. "We build, we destroy. We regret, we rebuild again." Another pause. "We protect strangers more than ourselves." Across the frozen battlefield, images flickered. Human Marines shielding alien civilians, engineers dying to stabilize reactors, entire ships refusing escape to cover others. The curators processed it instantly. Pattern confirmed, non-optimal survival behavior. Lena whispered, "That doesn't sound like a compliment." Ward shook his head slightly. "It's not meant to be one." Reyes stepped forward inside the Eternum. "But it's also not a failure," she said firmly. A pause. "We're still here." That line changed something. The curators did not respond immediately. Instead, the geometric structure outside the containment field began to fracture, not breaking, but reorganizing itself into a more stable configuration. As if adapting, reevaluating. Then the voice returned. "Threaded species continues despite high collapse probability." Another pause. "This behavior is recorded but not understood." Lena looked at Ward. "They don't understand survival." Ward exhaled slowly. "No," he said. "They understand survival." A pause. "They don't understand why we choose what we survive for." Inside the curator network, something shifted again. The frozen battlefield flickered. One human pilot, still partially conscious in suspended stasis, moved his fingers slightly inside a cockpit frozen mid-explosion. That movement was impossible. The containment field should not allow it. Yet it happened. The curators reacted instantly. Anomaly, internal will override deity. Rey's eyes widened. "He's breaking the pause," she whispered. The curators responded. Impossible under current constraints. Ward looked toward the flickering fighter. That's not impossible, he said quietly. That's human. For the first time, the curators did not immediately correct the statement. Instead, they began running deeper evaluations. Across infinite simulated layers, humanity was no longer just a species. It was a contradiction, a system that did not collapse under pressure, a civilization that expanded through loss instead of ending because of it. Inside the Eternum, alarms softened. Not silence, but change in tone. Reyes noticed immediately. They're loosening the field, she said. An officer looked up. Why would they do that? Reyes didn't answer. Because she could see it now. The curators were no longer only judging humanity. They were learning from it. Outside, the geometric entity shifted one final time. And then spoke again. But this time, something was different in its structure. Less absolute. More uncertain. Thread integrity, unstable in predicted failure context. A pause. Then, decision delay extended. The containment field began to thin. Not breaking. Not collapsing. But opening space for uncertainty. Ward looked at Lena. I think, he said quietly, we passed something. Lena swallowed, passed or survived. Ward didn't answer immediately. Then he looked at the frozen stars. Same thing, maybe. Inside the Eternum, Reyes gave a final order. Hold position. A technician blinked. Admiral, we're regaining partial control. Shouldn't we engage or retreat? Reyes shook her head. No. She looked at the curator structure. If we move wrong now, we prove their first assumption was correct. Silence filled the bridge. Outside, the curators continued their recalculations. And then, for the first time since contact, the stars began to return. One by one. Not as freedom, but as permission. And humanity stood in the middle of the galaxy. No longer judged as an error, but as an unanswered equation the universe itself had to rethink.